Welcome back, everybody. This is the Ing2 podcast, and I am Matt. And in today's episode, we're going to be learning some strong adjectives in English. So we don't need to always say very. We could try these different options instead. We're continuing the topic of my travels in Vietnam today, but we're not talking about my travels this year. I'm going back 10 years into the past when I was a young 21-year-old backpacker traveling around Vietnam, and I got myself into a little bit of trouble. I'm going to tell you that story today and teach you these strong adjectives as we go. Let's get into it. So, an unavoidable part of traveling is that unfortunately sometimes things go wrong. And at times we can get ourselves into sticky situations when we're traveling. The sticky situation is a really nice phrase, guys. It means a situation where you're in trouble and you need to get out of that trouble. A sticky situation. And that's okay, I think. It makes travel exciting, it makes it interesting, and it gives us some stories to tell. Now, recently on the podcast, I've been talking about my time living and working in the capital of Vietnam, Hanoi, earlier this year. But it wasn't the first time that I visited Vietnam. I actually traveled around the country as a backpacker when I was 21. And it was during this trip that I got myself into one of the stickiest situations I've ever been in my life of traveling. And I'm going to tell you that story today. So a little bit of background information first of all. I was 21 years old and I was traveling alone as a backpacker. We've talked about this phrase on the podcast many times, guys, and backpacking is a style of travel that young people often enjoy. It's where they travel around with all of their clothes in just a small bag or backpack, and they try to change location, change destination very often, traveling at a low cost, so not spending a lot of money. So I was backpacking around Vietnam and I had an incredible trip. I started in the north, in Hanoi, and I slowly worked my way down to the south, and my final destination was Ho Chi Minh City, also known as Saigon sometimes. And it was in Ho Chi Minh City, it was in Saigon, where I got myself into this very sticky situation. Now, Ho Chi Minh City is a very big and very busy city. It's absolutely packed with people and motorcycles. Packed is a really good, strong adjective. It means very crowded, okay, very full. So Ho Chi Minh City is packed with people and motorbikes. It's full of people and motorbikes. And there are a lot of tourists there as well. As I mentioned, I was coming to the end of my trip. Ho Chi Minh City was my final stop, and I was looking to party. I was only 21. I'd been traveling for a couple of weeks on my own, and I wanted to finish my trip on a high by going out and having some drinks with and meeting some new people. So I was staying in a hostel, and when you travel alone, particularly in Southeast Asia, and you stay in hostels, you often find a lot of young people who are also traveling alone, and naturally you become friends and you hang out together. So I met quite a big group of people in the hostel I was staying at, and we went out for some food and we started to have a few drinks, started to have a few beers. After a few beers, a few of us decided that we wanted to continue the night and head to a nightclub. So we got ourselves a motorbike taxi. And in Vietnam, these are really common. So there are way more motorbikes than cars on the roads in Vietnam. And you don't have to take a traditional taxi. You can ride on a motorbike taxi, which is quite fun if you've never done it before, especially for young 21-year-olds. It's quite exciting. Anyway, Before long, we found ourselves a motorbike taxi driver, and for some strange reason, I don't know why we did this, there were about 8 of us, I think. So, of course, only a maximum of 2 people could ride on the motorbike at any time. But instead of taking 4 separate motorbike taxis, we decided to go with the same driver. So this motorbike taxi driver would take 2 people to the nightclub, and then he would come back, take 2 more, come back, take 2 more, and then finally come back for the final 2 people. Now, we had been drinking, of course. I can't say that I was steaming, but I was obviously drunk enough to not make good decisions at that time. I used the word steaming there, guys, and that's another strong adjective and classic British slang as well. To be steaming means to be very, very drunk. Okay, so I wasn't steaming. I wasn't really, really drunk, but I was drunk enough to make some silly decisions and maybe not think or understand the situation very clearly. Anyway, as I mentioned, the motorbike taxi driver was taking us to the nightclub 2 by 2. And me and another guy, we said that we would wait until the end. So we would be the last 2 people to be picked up. Anyway, the taxi driver was making the journeys and he was coming back and everything seemed to be fine. And finally, it was our turn to get on the motorbike. As me and my new friend were climbing onto this motorbike, we noticed another motorbike taxi driver come a little bit close to us. And the 2 Vietnamese motorbike taxi drivers started arguing with each other. Of course, we didn't know what it was about. In fact, we were kind of baffled, really. We didn't really know what was going on because they were arguing for quite a long time and we weren't moving. And I used the word there, guys, baffled. We were baffled. And to be baffled means to be very confused. So we were baffled because these 2 motorbike taxi drivers were arguing in Vietnamese. We were really confused. We didn't know what was happening. Anyway, the situation seemed to get a little bit unfriendly. It got a little bit aggressive between these 2 drivers. And our driver quickly he didn't really speak English, but he used his hands and his facial expressions to say to us, quickly, quickly, just get on my motorbike. And eventually we left and the motorbike that we were on drove away from this other driver that he was arguing with. Anyway, we were going down quite a big road and I noticed that our motorbike driver kept looking behind him, constantly looking behind him. And he made some more hand gestures to me and my new friend to suggest that the other driver that he was arguing with was following us, was coming. And he said, or he gestured, that we needed to pull over to the side of the road. Okay, a nice phrasal verb there, guys. Pull over means when you're driving, you come to the side of the road and stop. So to pull over. So we pulled over at the side of the road and our driver gestured to me and my friend to get off the motorbike for a moment. So we got off the motorbike and he opened the storage box of the motorbike and pulled out a blue plastic bag. But I saw that something was wrapped up in this blue plastic bag. At this point, me and my friend, remember we're a little bit drunk, we'd been drinking beer. We were a little bit confused, but we still didn't really know what was happening. We didn't know what was going on. Anyway, our driver continued gesturing to show that this driver who he was arguing with was coming. And he unwrapped this blue plastic bag and inside it was a gun. It was a gun. Okay, so pretty crazy at this point. It was a really old-fashioned gun as well, like, you know those ones you see in American cowboy movies where you put 6 bullets in the gun and it kind of turns every time you shoot. It was like that. So the driver gets this gun out of the blue plastic bag and kind of puts it in his pocket, continues gesturing that, you know, the other driver is coming, and tells us to get back on the motorbike. So at this point, it's safe to say that myself and this other British guy I was with were pretty foolish. We were pretty foolish. And to be foolish is another strong adjective, guys. It means to be very stupid. So we were really foolish because we agreed and we got back on the motorbike with this driver who now had a gun in his pocket. We were really foolish, really stupid. So we continued driving down the busy road, and then we turned down a smaller street and we pulled over to the side. Remember, pull over means to stop at the side of the road when you're driving. And I could see just down the road on the corner of the street, I could see all of our friends. So we were really close to the nightclub that we wanted to go to. And our friends were queuing to go inside, or maybe they were waiting for us, I'm not sure. But we were just far enough away for them to not see us. So they didn't know we were there. Anyway, me and my friend, we got off the motorbike taxi. We thought, okay, that was pretty crazy, but we're here, everything's okay. Next thing though, the driver asked us for a really stupid price, a very, very high price. And this is really common in Vietnam. When you're a tourist, you have to expect this. Taxi drivers, market sellers, they'll try to ask for a higher price than usual from tourists. But we'd been in Vietnam for quite a long time, so we knew this, and we just said, you know, no, that's too high. Usually you would negotiate a little bit with the driver. So he'll ask for this amount, you say, no, that's too high. He asks for another price, you say, that's still too high. Eventually you agree on a price. Not this time. So we said, no, that's too high. And the next thing I know, bang, out comes the gun. And he's pointing the gun at me and my friend. And it suddenly changes to, well, give me all of your money then. Give me all of your money. So this motorbike taxi driver had me and my friend down this dark street against the wall with this really old gun pointing at us, and he was telling us to give him all of our money. Now, when I look back at this, I am actually quite proud of myself. I had been really foolish to get back on that bike after I saw him take out the gun. But I think I dealt with the situation in a good way. In fact, the adrenaline really kicked in. So hopefully we know this one, guys. Adrenaline, it's a hormone, I think, or a chemical in the body. And when you're in a very dangerous or scary or exciting situation, your body produces adrenaline, and it gives you a lot of energy, I guess, or it helps you to think really clearly so you can deal with the situation. And I have to say, when I look back, I was okay. I wasn't terrified. I wasn't shitting myself. Okay, two nice ways to say that you're really scared there, guys. The first one is terrified. Okay, so terrified means very scared. But the second one is to be shitting yourself. This is a really nice one in British slang. So to be shitting yourself means to be very, very scared. Now, be careful, okay? It does use the word shit, which is a swear word. It's not very polite. So don't use this phrase at work, don't use it in a job interview. But if you're with your friends, go for it. Say, oh, I'm shitting myself, if you're really scared. So in this situation, the guy has the gun pointing at me. I wasn't terrified. I wasn't shitting myself because of the adrenaline. So I don't really know how I communicated to the driver because he didn't speak English. But I emptied my pockets and I told my friend to do the same. And we gave him all of the money we had, which was actually very, very little. So we didn't take our phones with us. And I think I had about $7 in my pocket. And that was a really good decision. In fact, in the hostel, there were a lot of notices that said pickpocketing means stealing from your pockets, is very common. So don't take valuable items with you when you go out. And it was good that we listened to that advice because we only had a tiny amount of money and no phones with us. So we gave him all of the money we had, but he wasn't satisfied. He was kind of like saying, give me more. But we were like, man, we don't have any more. That's all we have. And then again, as I think back to this, it's really strange because I don't know how this guy communicated with us and we communicated with him, but he gestured to us to go to our friends who we could see down the street, remember, and get more money. Okay, so at this point, I said to the guy I was with, I said, I'll stay here, you go to those guys and ask them for more money. So he ran down the street to our other friends, and the driver still has his gun pointing at me. Now, in fact, I can see that the driver is shitting himself, okay? So the driver, I think, was more scared than I was. His hand was trembling, and he kept looking from side to side to see if anyone was coming. Nice word there, guys, trembling. So his hand was trembling. It means his hand was shaking. He couldn't keep his hand still. So I could see he was nervous. Anyway, he kept asking me for more money, and I showed him as clearly as I could that I had nothing else. I emptied my pockets. Eventually, and thankfully, before my friend could even get back to us, I think this driver just gave up. So he got back on his motorbike and he rode away. And that was the end of that sticky situation. So I went and met with my friend again, and he was in a big panic. I could see that he was really nervous. He was stunned. He couldn't believe what just happened. There's another strong adjective, guys. He was stunned. So to be stunned means to be very, very surprised. You could say stunned or you could say shocked. So he was stunned and he was telling the others what had happened. So we kind of sat down with the other people. We told them the story. We couldn't go to the nightclub because we didn't have any money left, right? So the other guys paid for a taxi for us, a car taxi this time, no more motorbikes. And we went back to our hostel. And I have to say, in the taxi on the way back to the hotel, the adrenaline kind of died down for me. And I was thinking, oh my God, that was insane. What just happened? So insane is another strong adjective. It means very, very crazy. Okay, so what an insane thing to happen. And I did feel quite nervous actually when the adrenaline disappeared, and I was very happy to get back to the safety of the hostel. So that was the end of that sticky situation. Thankfully, I got out of it okay. But as I look back on that, there are a few things that I think about and a few things that I definitely learned from it. First of all, I think it's a really good story. Okay, so it's something that I will never forget, and I can't believe it happened to me. But secondly, I think about how idiotic I was. Idiotic, again, means very, very stupid. So you could say idiotic or foolish. They're both very similar. So I was idiotic, I think, and I have to put that down to alcohol, really. I wasn't thinking clearly, and I was just stupid. So I believe that the whole argument between the two drivers and all of the, our driver looking behind him, saying the other driver is following us, I believe it was all an act. And I believe those two drivers were actually working together. But there were at least two occasions when I could have got out of this situation. Firstly, it was really stupid for us to go 2 by 2 in the first place. And when I look back, I really don't know why we didn't just go with 3 separate drivers. But secondly, and probably the most foolish thing, was after we pulled over at the side of the road and the driver took out the gun, we got back on the bike. And that was idiotic, I think. At that point, we should have just said, whoa, man, you've got a gun in your pocket. Like, I'm not getting back on that bike, thank you. So looking back now, I do think that I am better equipped to deal with a situation like that. To be well equipped means that you have the skills or you have the things that you need to deal with the situation. So I am better equipped. I am well equipped now. I have the skills and the knowledge to deal with those situations or to not get in those situations anyway. So that was it. Yeah, luckily everything was fine. I only lost $7. I didn't lose my life, and I came out with a lot of lessons learned and quite a cool story to tell as well. And that's one of the things I just love about traveling, is even when you get yourself in a sticky situation like that, there's always something to learn, and you have really cool stories that you can pass on to other people in the future. So I hope you've enjoyed listening today, guys. It was quite fun for me to go back over that story. It was nearly 10 years ago now, so a long time ago. We had some nice vocabulary in there as well, so I actually think that was a really useful one. We learned some good, strong adjectives, so we don't always need to say very. We could replace them with those strong adjectives in the right situation. As always, I really appreciate any feedback that you might have on the podcast. So give me a message or leave me a review on Spotify, wherever you get the podcast. That will be really, really helpful. And if there are any words or phrases that I've used in today's episode that you're not very clear about, give me a message and I'm more than happy to help. Have a great week, guys, and make sure you check back in next time, because we're moving on from Vietnam and I'm going to talk about another sticky situation that I got myself in actually earlier this year on my 30th birthday. Have a great week and see you next time. Thank you so much for listening.